Imagine a world where more women had the time to fully explore their genius. Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the UK's podcast for women leaders and founders ready to unlearn conventional rules and lead their businesses of significance. We've been held for counter-status quo ideas and a whole dose of feminine perspective. This is our 8th series. My name's Lulu Minns and I host retreats and create spaces for women leaders to explore their genius. And today, I'm going to create that same space right here for you on this podcast. Welcome to episode 127 of She Rebel Radio, Writing for Authenticity with Hannah Beko. Hannah is the author of The Authentic Lawyer, a book that helps lawyers and other professionals to be more authentic within the workplace and with their own goals and ambitions. With over 17 years of experience as a commercial property lawyer, 10 of those running her own practice, Hannah is also a coach, trainer and host of not one, but 2 podcasts. As well as being a mum of 3, Hannah has suffered with burnout firsthand. Therefore, she passionately believes in business without burnout and that learning to be authentic to yourself is absolutely critical in being able to do that. With a love of lawyers, she specialises in delivering trainings to firms and also supporting legal business owners to lead more authentically and without the dreaded burnout. We've been connected since 2016, so a long time now, Hannah. How are you doing today?
Oh, fantastic to see you, Lulu. You know that we've had some challenges in the family personally recently, and even we've had some challenges getting this episode recorded for your podcast. But I'm really glad we're here, and it's really nice to be able to catch up with you again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we learned something as lawyers about perseverance, don't we?
We do, yes, and sometimes we're pushed beyond what we thought was possible. But yes, we're still very much here.
Amazing. Now, you have a love of lawyers, which I think is very authentic to you. You are also married to another lawyer. What is it that you love about lawyers, and why is it you think us lawyers tend to be overachievers at times?
Oh, do you know, when you suggested this question, I've never been asked this before, although I talk about it a lot. It's in a lot of my sort of literature about this idea of a love for lawyers. It wasn't always there, because, you know, it's not a sort of word you would associate perhaps with lawyers. But I've been around lawyers my whole career. I wanted to be a lawyer from the age of 13. Not that I knew what it was then, I just thought it sounded great. But, you know, my whole career, 20 odd years now as a lawyer. And yes, I met my husband when we worked at the same firm years ago. Lots of my friends are lawyers. And now, obviously, although I still work a few hours a week as a lawyer as well, I spend a lot of time training and coaching lawyers. And it made sense in the beginning to work with lawyers because that was my background. But I have come to absolutely love this work and the difference I think I can make, because lawyers have unique challenges. I'm not saying other professions don't have their own, and maybe some are common, but they have so many unique challenges. And you highlighted one there, this overachiever, this sense of perfectionism. And it's so damaging. It makes us so unhappy and so mentally ill as well, you know, and the stress levels and how that impacts our lives, whether it's from, you know, fertility and reproduction to our relationships with our families and friends, to our relationship with ourselves, and how long we can actually stay in this career because of it. So for all those reasons, I feel that they uniquely need help and support from someone who really gets who they are, the language they speak, the unique challenges they have, but that can see a better way and that it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult things, and I know when I left the legal profession and, you know, have coached lawyers and things like that before, is noticing that we have this tendency to always be trying to predict the future, because that's what you're paid to do for your clients, is to look at worst case scenario and how to avoid that, which can be really damaging for us personally if you're always kind of thinking down that avenue.
Yes, it is. It's that pessimistic outlook on life, I suppose, isn't it? Which, whether you intend to have it or not, when you spend all day, whether you're, you know, I'm transactional property, but whether you're corporate, litigation, whatever you are, you're always looking for the problems, the issues, where somebody trying to catch out your client. You know, that's what we're trained on doing all the time, is looking for the issues and looking for the problems. And then it's no wonder that we sort of start doing that with our whole way of thinking, that can just become very negative and we don't know how to get out of it, perhaps without, the help and support and suggestions from others.
Yeah, 100%. Now, on a lighter note, you have a brilliant photo of you in the book, aged 8, with, as you call it, palm tree hair and a My Little Pony tracksuit,
Yes.
which is amazing. It reminded me of some memories of my own. But what other funny memories do you have which you feel is representative of you as a person today?
Well, the reason that photo made it into the book is because of a story I've been telling the last few years in my authenticity keynote. And that is when I sort of had my, I'd say aha moment, but it's a bit just before that, my, oh my goodness, do I even want to do this anymore? Can I do this anymore with my stress levels like this, with my blood pressure like this? Is this what I even want anymore? When I had that moment and then started to think, okay, what do I want if I'm not a lawyer? Because all I could say to myself was, I'm Hannah, I'm a lawyer. I didn't know what else I was or could be. And so many lawyers find themselves there as well. And I know obviously you've been down that path too.
Yeah.
But when I had that moment, and a coach of mine at the time said, think back to your 6-year-old self. Who were you? What did you love? And so I went back to this memory where my dad would hire a video camera every summer, in the days before they were all on our phones. One of these,
Well,
the
they were
big you put on your
huge.
shoulder. It was like a film crew studio. You put it on your shoulder and had a microphone on the front.
Yeah.
He would hire that every summer, and whenever he switched it on, I was in front of the camera. My poor little brother and sister didn't get a look in. I was always there, singing, dancing, not very well, by the way, but I was doing it, interviewing the rabbit, doing the 6 o'clock news, whatever it was, I was there. And I remembered that, and yet I'd lost all of that because moving from the south to the north and having an accent that didn't fit in, going to school, being bullied very heavily because of the way I spoke, I stopped speaking and I stopped standing up in front of people and I stopped doing those things. And remembering that was a real key piece to me thinking about then going down the training path and presenting path that I absolutely love now. I mean, it's my happy place to be. But I think if I hadn't had that memory and gone back to that, I don't know if I would have connected the dots and found that path.
Yeah, and I think that's so important that you highlight that in the book, because when we go back to who we were as children and the key moments that also make us change that because we're trying to fit in with others is absolutely critical. We actually did a Barbie episode on She Rebel Radio recently following the film, and actually following that, and I definitely recommend checking that out. Following that though, I remembered I had a Gem doll. I don't know if you remember Gem and Rio, and she ran her own record studio and she was like the rebel doll. And I absolutely loved her. And again, it's just very representative of me as a person in terms of being counter status quo. My parents ran a record shop, so she had her own record label, and actually not fitting in and remembering those key moments of things that came very naturally to you as a child really reminds me of the Dolly Parton quote, is like, find out who you are and do it on purpose. And that's
yes.
Yeah, it's so key to what makes us different. It is really how we can, kind of stay authentic, to use that word.
Yeah, it is. And I always say to my lawyers, it doesn't have to become a new career or a second business or whatever it might do. But even if you just remember that and bring it into your personal life, the sense of freedom and happiness and the impact on, again, your stress levels and mental health that has is just fantastic.
Yeah, it may just be, as you say, not a change of career, but using that as a filter to be more authentic in what it is that you are doing.
Yes, exactly.
So what does the word authenticity mean to you, and why is it so important?
Wow, this is a tough one and getting tougher, actually. Every day I'm seeing sort of new comment on this idea of authenticity and what does it mean to bring our whole selves to work. So I'm very much always sort of finessing how I talk about it. But in simple terms, when I put my first ever presentation together, I looked at the Old English language, the etymology, if you like, of authenticity, and it talked about how it meant to tread your own path. And I really like that to go back to, because just as you were sort of hinting there, particularly in the legal profession, we get onto this conveyor belt of, right, I get my degree or I get my first job and I do this for a few years, then I progress into this role. And it's very much mapped out. and you can feel like a failure if you fall off or step off that path at any point. So I think this idea that, yes, we can be lawyers, but we don't have to do it the same way that everyone else is. Maybe partnership is not for you. Maybe management or supervision is not for you. Maybe high billing or rainmaking is not for you. What is it that is for you, and finding your own path to tread within that profession. So for me, that's sort of where it starts. And I think that simple definition then encompasses all the different nuances people are talking about. We do have a slightly different personality, maybe in work to at home, and we do have a slightly different personality even with our own clients. How I might be with little old lady is not how I am with PLC director, business owner. So there's different. Authenticity looks different with different people and in different situations, but it's still about you and the path you're treading.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of my favorites, and one that I use a lot, is not compromising yourself. And definitely when I left the legal profession, I really remembered that all I'd ever wanted to do is criminal practice within the legal profession. And people still say to me now, why don't you do a different area? And it's that as simple as that wasn't authentic to me. I practiced to practice criminal litigation, and when I was done with that, I was done, kind of thing. So yeah, it's remembering those reasons. So do you think, because you kind of hinted there as well, that authenticity, and I know you've been using the word for an extremely long time, is in the process of being overused at the moment? Is it being confused with vulnerability and or emotional dumping? You address both in the book, and I'd love to know more of your thoughts. And actually, just on that, we've shared on She Rebel Radio whether, I find particularly with social media, are people oversharing, thinking it's authentic, but actually it's a whole load of emotional dumping?
Yes, and yes to that. Sometimes I open up, whether it's LinkedIn, which I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I absolutely love it, and it's done very well for me business-wise over the years as well. But yes, there is this. It's wonderful that people are talking about authenticity more and more. But there is this sense of, I'm going to be authentic, so I'm going to go on LinkedIn and tell everybody about how terrible things have been, or I'm not just going to post the good things. I'm going to now I agree with that, but I think there are degrees, and I think we have to think carefully about how we do it. For me, I don't always just post about all the great things, although I do try to post mainly about great things, because I've come to be known as positivity and trying to spread that, and that is what I want to do, but not toxic positivity in the sense of everything's great when it's not. So I do try to balance it. But even in the more negative things, for me, I always try to have a message, something to take away at the end, because it's not just all bad for the sake of bad. That I don't like when people do post things like that personally.
No.
Because that is sort of using, your phrase there, the sort of emotional dumping, or I'm just going to tell everybody how upset I am and how bad it is. That's not, to me, helpful in terms of if we're trying to move things forward, especially in the legal profession, where yes, we do talk about our stress levels and our emotional health and mental health, but not in a, oh my goodness, this is so bad, it's terrible, end of. It's like, no, it's bad and it's terrible, but what are we going to do? This is a good point to reach where we recognize that we can't just ignore this anymore, like we've done for the last 15 odd years or more.
Yeah, or bad and terrible in order to sell, and I know we are there, to sell a product or service, but it's kind of, I feel quite uncomfortable in some degree of going to a networking event and I know absolutely everything about somebody and I've never met them.
Yeah, you're right. Again, it's you and I have been around for a little while, and we've seen all these different marketing tactics, haven't we, for coaching and things like that. And yes, years ago it was the whole, point at their pain points and make them feel really bad and then try and sell them something. And I was never comfortable with that. I never was, and I'm certainly not now. And it's never been the approach that I try and portray. Maybe I'd have even more uptake if I talked about how truly bad things are for my clients before they come and work with me. But that's not the message I want to get out there. The message I want to get out is, you're great, you're brilliant already, but there are just little tweaks, little changes, little things that can make things easier for you, make your job and your career even more enjoyable, make you sleep better at night, have better relationships. It's those little tweaks to make things better, not, oh my goodness, everything is terrible.
Yeah. And do you think, we can be authentic without being vulnerable and vice versa? Because the crossover of the two, people don't seem to have clear.
I would probably say no. I think there is an element of vulnerability to authenticity, but that varies from person to person. So I am somebody now, not years ago, and my mum even commented on this recently when I had when we had a particularly difficult family time, and I literally had an emotional sort of breakdown in the middle of the hospital. And my mum sort of said, well, the old Hannah would never have done that. And I said, well, this Hannah didn't have any choice. Because over the years, I've learned to wear my emotions at a place where I can express them and deal with them instead of burying them all and pretending that everything's fine when it's not. So they do come out. And for me, that is part of my authenticity. And it's how I connect with people. I can be talking to somebody I've never met and something they say brings tears to my eyes. And I'm not afraid of that. And so I'm happy to share that vulnerability and that, oh my goodness, you've moved me to tears, or you've moved me to anger by what you've said about the way you've been treated. The appropriate level for whoever it is I'm talking to and how well we know each other, of course. But for me, there is that sense of vulnerability. Now, that's not the same for everyone. Everyone will find their level. But particularly when I'm talking to a lot of people about leadership, if you don't show any vulnerability in a position of leadership, how is anyone really going to feel they can trust you? And when they've got a problem that they need to be vulnerable about, how do they feel they can come to you when they've never seen that in you? Yeah. So I think a part of it is needed, but the level is dependent on the person and the situation.
Yeah, who it is you're talking to, and how much I think people need to get their head around. You've perhaps processed what it is that you're sharing, because there are spaces that it's not appropriate to process at the time of sharing, and there's a good distinction there.
Yes, 100%. I think you've got to have gone through the worst and had whatever support, etc., you need for that before you perhaps are, as you say, sharing it with others.
Yeah. Now, as a lawyer, you suffered burnout, as did I, although I didn't call it that at the time. How together can we continue to wave the flag that being busy all the time isn't necessarily a good thing? In your experience, how does being busy get in the way of our authentic selves?
Being busy has become something that is ingrained in us, I'd say at baby lawyer stage, but it's probably even before that. Because when you think about the academic level of achievement you need to get into law, working hard and being busy starts at what, GCSEs, if not earlier. When this sort of fear of, oh my goodness, your future is going to be ruined if you don't do well, that's certainly the message I was getting when I was young, and I try very hard not to put that onto my children. But that message of you've got to always be achieving and working really hard is ingrained in us so young that I know I saw this in myself and I see it in lots of my clients. The idea of stopping and doing, and I know we're not doing video at the moment, but in speech marks, doing nothing, is so alien to us. It feels like a waste of our time. It feels like we should be doing something, whether that should is spending time with our family because we've been working all week, getting to the gym and doing some exercise because we haven't been doing any, reading up on some new book or some new case, or whatever it is. We feel as though the times when we're not doing anything is a waste of time and it's not valuable. And I had to work really hard on this, and maybe I still am, to see that actually the times when I do meditation or go for a quiet walk just to clear my thoughts, or even for me, it's a drive in the car with loud music on, to do those things is not a waste of time. And in fact, it's valuable and it's necessary, because doing those things means I'm better at my job. I can think more clearly. I can think more rationally. I procrastinate less, come up with my best ideas. I'm a better person for it and better in my work. And for me, that realization unlocked it all. And that's what I really work with my clients to see, that no, this is not a waste of time. It's actually a valuable part of your career and your life, and we have to make space for it.
Yeah. And as you're the type of clients that you're working with and that I'm working with, it becomes, and I call it the being over the doing, and a feminine principle as well, is that, when you're leading teams or leading a business or both, you need more of the being. As you say there, your best ideas come from that space, and transition comes from space. And now we've got AI stepping into the mix, that's going to do a whole load of work for us as well. We need to learn to step into the being far more.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And a mind hack, now you might disagree with this, Lulu, and I fully appreciate if you do, but a mind hack I try and use with my clients is do it because you know it will benefit, your business or your practice. If that's the best you can do at the time, you don't do it because you know that you're worth it and your health is worth it, because that's too big of a jump for them in the beginning. It can take a long time to come round to, excuse the L'Oreal advert, reference, but the idea that you're worth it is very difficult for a lot of my clients in the early stages. But what is easier for them is to say, actually, I'm going to go and do some of the being, as you call it, because it will make me better at everything else I need to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And we have to appreciate where people are in their stages. And I always take myself back to a friend of mine gave me a hypnosis CD, because that's how long ago it was that I left legal. And I literally couldn't lie down and listen to it.
Yes.
And I didn't have anything else to do, but I kept on getting up thinking I had stuff to do. And I thought, God, this is bad. This is bad, that I literally cannot sit still, even though my reality is I have nothing to do today, which was freaking me out. In all
Yes.
reality.
But that's an absolute example of the mindsets that many of us lawyers have, because we've worked that way for so many years. Your brain just wouldn't allow you to go there. A funny story that I think you'll appreciate. I often listen to YouTube videos and things on extra speed, so 1.25, 1.5. Perhaps it's an ADHD trait, but then one day I went to put my meditation on and I almost sped that up as well. That's when you realise, oh dear, take a step back, Hannah.
Yeah, don't try and get through it quicker. But there is an uncomfortableness, and there is also there's lots of stuff that comes up when we sit still that we've maybe been avoiding for quite some time, and that's really uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it's us appreciating that, and clients working with us to hold that space as those things will and usually do come to fruition somewhere.
Yes.
So I love how you shared in the book not realizing the unconscious bias that was placed upon you as a mother to do the majority of the childcare, being there when they are sick, the school calling you as a first port of call, and then sharing all of that with your husband. How did that impact both of your authenticity journeys?
It has been quite a journey for us. So our eldest is 13 now, and when we started on the journey, my husband's 10 years older than me, so he is a much more experienced lawyer. When we met, he was on more than double my salary. I was a fairly junior lawyer at the time, about 6 years PQE. And so, yes, we fell naturally into those roles of me being a stay-at-home mum when I was on maternity leave, and then even when I went back part-time. Although not for long, because I think that taste of freedom was too much for me in that year off, and I just then had to go and become self-employed after that. But there was a lot of years of struggle, and sometimes it does still pop up where he was expecting me to do the traditional role of, okay, yes, you might be running multiple businesses and earning decent money, etc., but you'll still be there when the kids are off sick, won't you? I'm like, well, yes, but not when I'm on a business retreat in Morocco, or not when I'm already arrived in London that day. I can't be there then. So there was a real shift. There had to be, for both of us, for me to understand that, traditionally, and those were the beliefs he had, just because that's the way he was brought up and that's what society has always been telling us, versus actually, I am a really ambitious person, both for my legal business and my training and coaching business. And for him to start to understand that it was important for me to show the children the value of having a career that you absolutely love and that you want to spend time doing and go away to do. It doesn't take anything away from the family and how much you love them, but to follow your passions and your dreams and things like that. It's been so important for my children to see that. Incidentally, they all say they don't want a boss and they all want to be self-employed, so that's quite interesting too. But yeah, it has been a journey, and in a lot of ways it's allowed him to think about what he really wants to do, because he's now doing 4 days a week. He spends a day a week at least working on the children's football team that he now manages, and he loves it. That's his happy place. So it's actually enabled him to step off what he thought he had to do, which is, he was a partner for a time. He ticked that box. He felt he ticked everything he needed to tick in his career. And actually that didn't make him super happy. But doing the work he does now, 4 days a week, locally to us, and being able to manage the kids' football team is what makes him happy too.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful to hear. And it's so interesting, isn't it? And it's often the case, with husbands, partners, whether there's an age difference or not, they're earning more money. So it makes sense to do X, Y, Z without thinking of it. Actually, often they've had less uninterrupted time focused on their jobs. And then maybe, it's more of our time of women's time. So and then actually the beauty of that is having a more authentic journey and men being able to do more of what they enjoy, and it not just being work focused, being more
Yes.
family and hobbies, and seeing what comes out of that as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. I see many male, I coach a lot of male lawyers and I really enjoy working with them. And many of them want this balance too. They've been put into a box that says they have to work full time and they have to be partners or team leaders and things. And some of them don't want that, or they've done it and they don't want it anymore, and they do want to do other things. So if it opens the door for, as all the changes do in society and in legal, it opens the door for men as well to do something different, then I'm all for that as well.
Yeah, I can't remember if you've got that in the book, but that one of the biggest regrets, end of life, particularly for men, is working too much and working too
Hmm.
hard,
Hmm.
and
Oh
not
yeah.
not not spending time with loved ones.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
huge.
Mm.
Now, one of my favorite tips in the book was also sharing what litigation taught you about authenticity. That's probably for me spending 11 years in litigation. Can you share with us what that was?
I still remember this, and I only did litigation for such a small period of time. But it's given me a lesson that I still use. I use it now, 22 years later. I still remind myself of this. And I tell little junior lawyers this as well when they're panicking about things. We had a meeting with a particularly aggressive opponent, and it was the first time I'd met the client in person. We went across to the other side's offices and we sat down while they shouted at us and told us what they were willing to agree to and their terms and things. And I didn't interrupt his flow. I let him get off his chest what he needed to get off his chest. And then at the end, literally, it was a line or two. I just said something like, "Well, if we went to court, you wouldn't get that. You'd get this, and we're happy to offer you that." And that was sort of it. And I remember at the time sitting there thinking, should I just let him rant? Should I say something? My client is sitting here paying me, and I'm not saying anything. I'm just letting this guy talk. But literally, we came out of the meeting and my client just said, "Oh, he was difficult, wasn't he? But you handled that so well." And it's been a lesson for me that we don't have to just talk. Yes, we get paid, and some people think we get paid to talk. No, we get paid to get the job done. And if that means sitting and listening while the other side or whoever, the client sometimes, rants and gets what they need to off their chest, then you calmly put across your point of view, then that's always worked for me. And whether it's litigation or now not litigation, whether it's negotiation, whether it's coaching clients or property clients, that approach still works.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I actually, in criminal practice, my clients used to rant quite a lot, as you can imagine. Not at me particularly, but I just, let them do what they need to do, ask that one powerful question. And also, we do it with the police quite a lot, actually, is just let them go down the track that they were going down. And then, at the moment they least expected it, would come out with a comment in the interview or something like that, that they knew they'd gone down the wrong track.
Yeah.
And pulling it up that way, and it's all about really listening and tuning in. So that's really important. It's not always about speaking and having your voice heard.
Absolutely. And again, I think growing up and seeing different lawyers in large law firms as I did, there were many who just wanted to speak for the sake of it. And that's never been my approach. And it's not the approach with most people that I work with. And they actually feel inferior in some ways to those people who just want to talk a lot. So it's trying to help them understand that actually, in my view, that's probably covering some sense of insecurity or lack of confidence by the over talking. So it's not
Yeah,
something they
no,
need to worry about.
yeah, I agree with that. And I think you've probably come across this, and it's no offense to anyone listening of new coaches and things like that, can do that a lot, in
Mm.
terms of telling everyone what they know about coaching, which is kind of the opposite of coaching, is sitting there and listening, and asking those powerful questions. And also when I was in litigation practice, I remember asking 3 questions in a practice cross-examination, and the tutor was like, "You're 100% ready." Whereas everyone else was trying to prove how great they were. I was like, just got 3 questions. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. That is authenticity to me. It's that instead of the little voice in your head saying, oh my goodness, I must talk a lot, I must show this client, whether it's coaching or for me, you know, property clients, I must show them what I know. I don't. If a new property client calls me, I say to them, tell me all about the deal. And I let them talk and talk and talk. And then I sort of say, well, I've just got, you know, a couple of questions, and ask the questions. That shows I know exactly what I'm talking about. And if they want to instruct me after that, fine. If they don't, then also fine. But it usually works. But you're absolutely right. It's that being that quiet confidence that you don't need to speak a lot.
Yeah, and same with sales calls and things like that. Again, if you're talking the most, it's probably not going very well.
Yes.
Definitely. So how did you find your authentic voice in writing the book? What were some of your biggest challenges there?
Well, in a lot of ways, time was my biggest challenge. And I know that's a fallacy. And I know it's not about time, it's about priorities. And genuinely, over the 3 years I was writing the book, there were some priorities that overtook, like COVID happened and homeschooling 3 children and that sort of thing, trying to run businesses. So there were genuine challenges around the timeframes. But actually, what I've come to see is the book came out when it needed to come out. Had it come out the year it was supposed to, it wouldn't have been the right time, and it wouldn't have been as popular, I don't think, as it is now. The challenge I think I faced generally in starting the business, and in sort of 2016, when I spoke to a few people and they said, oh, you can't talk to lawyers about stress, that will never work. And you can't talk to lawyers about mental health, that will never work. So there were a lot of challenges around people saying to me that it would never happen. But I just, again, I know you'll resonate with this, Lulu, and you've probably felt this too. And I know I've done work with you as well, but I just knew it. I just knew that it had to. That there was never a choice. And a lot of people say to me now, like, how do you do it? How do you do it all? And no, it's not easy. I want to put that out there. But I don't have a choice. There's a driving force in this work that I'm unhappy and stressed if I'm not doing it. So I sort of have to do it. It's that driving. And the book was very much part of that. I remember someone saying to me before I actually finished it, do you even need to do the book now? Like, your practice has moved on, you're doing much more training. Do you even need to finish the book? And I said, yes, I've just got to get the book out there. And that was my mistake, because I thought I was just going to get the book out there and move on. But actually, what I didn't realize is the book has unlocked so many different things for me, whether it's additional trainings because HR people have read the book or people have recommended it to them, or whether it's keynote talks about the book. So it has unlocked so much. But there was a fear of what will people think of me? You know, I've got a certain reputation as a lawyer and a certain reputation in the legal community. What will people think? But I still remember the moment standing in my kitchen one day when I needed to post something on LinkedIn and thinking, I feel uncomfortable posting it. What will people think of me? And I literally stood there and thought, I either make this business work or I shut it down. And that's what I have to choose. And if I want this business to work, I have to talk honestly, openly, authentically. Otherwise, there is no business. And I made the decision that the business was more important, the work was more important, and how I felt about it didn't really matter.
Yeah, and I think what's really key there, Hannah, is being authentic and having that drive and that call to doing something that isn't out there at the time can be really difficult, and it can be uncomfortable. But as you and I have been connected for so long, and we've seen the world evolve as it has. It may be that, people that are listening to this, you may be ahead of your time on something, and feel that it's going to be judged and things like that. But then as things evolve, I can categorically say the only thing you regret is actually not being louder about it in the first place,
Yes.
of going, yeah, I knew that we were on a shift. And perhaps, but then we know from way early on when we used to speak and things like that, it is sometimes it can be confusion about what it is that you're trying to get out there and what it is that you're trying to share in terms of the message and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It has found its time now. And so in some respects, sometimes I look at things and I think, oh my goodness, we're all talking about the same thing now. But yes, what I hold to is, there is, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's my book, whether it's trainings, whether it's people who've just known me for 6-7 years now. I've been talking about this all along. I've nuanced and slightly shifted in perhaps the way I talk about it now, but all the stuff has always been there.
Yeah, 100%. So what has been one of your favourite personal development books that has made the biggest difference for you?
Oh, I have an absolute favourite personal development book. It's one of the first ones I read, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Mm-hmm.
I reread it. I've reread it at least 3 or 4 times. I usually give new clients a copy of it. I've probably got about 5 sitting around at home. It's a really easy little read, I think. It's not a long book, but there's one part in it that's always stood out for me where he talks about we're so busy trying to build this perfect or dream life that we forget where we've come from. And at one point he sort of says, you look back 2 years and you realize you're living your dream life from 2 years ago. And at the moment I read that, it was so powerful because I'd stopped, and at the time I read it, it was about 8 months after I'd reshifted my property business and changed that into something that worked for me when it wasn't before, and sort of started this work. And I look back and I'm like, I'm living my dream life from even 9, 12 months ago, never mind 2 years ago. And sometimes we do forget to stop and look back. And that was really, really powerful for me.
Yeah, it's so important. I think particularly if you're, wired to being one of those people that looks forwards and is, setting the next intentional goal or whatever you want to call it, that, we can sometimes be like, oh, why am I further ahead? And it's like, oh, hold on a minute, actually, where I was 2 years ago
Yeah.
is something. So yeah, that looking back has so much power. And I definitely stand by. I've read that book a number of times and recommend it a lot. It's a really, really key piece of personal transformation, I think. 100%.
Yes, and he has some other great books as well, but that was the first one I read. So,
Yeah, definitely. Now, what is next for you, Hannah, and where can we find you?
oh, what's next? What's next? Well, you can find me very much on LinkedIn. I'm usually very, very busy on LinkedIn, so under Hannah Beko. My website is authenticallyspeaking.co.uk, and of course, the book is available on Amazon and free on Kindle Unlimited. I think that's called The Authentic Lawyer. What's next? More training, I hope, because I really love training. I say it's literally my happy place at the front of the room, ideally in person, although we do online if it's, if people are all over the country or abroad. But just being in that room with lawyers, and yes, I might train on lots of what you might call, your usual topics, whether it's leadership or time management or whatever. But I do it in a different way, and I do it in a way that we look at each individual and how we can really make a difference for them. And it's those moments where they realize that they can change something and make things better. And I even feel emotional saying that. That's my real happy place, where I feel like I'm really helping people and changing the profession in my way.
Yeah, beautiful. It's been amazing to have you on She Rebel. As we said, how long we've been connected, and congratulations on the book. And it's been an honor to support you over the years, Hannah.
Oh, thank you, Lulu.
Thank you for listening to She Rebel Radio. If this episode has inspired you, please pass it on and share with at least one other incredible woman. Don't forget to also hit subscribe and leave us a review. You can find out more about me and my work at lulumins.com or on most social media platforms.